So what is reparenting? Think about it from like the actual concept, right? Okay, parent. Now you get to be like you reparent. What does that mean? Does that mean you parent the parent? No. You get to reparent, which means it's a second chance. Anything that has re is almost like a repetition or a come around of it. So return is to come back. Means make another one. So anything with re is really making another one. The definition of reparenting, really simple and easy, is giving yourself the needs that you always had, but that were never met. So basically meeting the needs that you always had, but that were never met. That basically is the long and short of this, which means there's the biggest component around what were my needs. Now, this is a $1 million question, because for a lot of us, when I ask you, what are your needs? You'll primarily say, I need my partner to respond to me at a certain time. I need commitment from someone I'm with, or I need the other person to be emotionally regulated. Our existence, especially when we continue with like living from a standpoint that's very external, which is more from our ego, it attaches more to how the other person or the world is showing up for us rather than how we feel after the fact. For example, if I'm with a partner and I feel dysregulated, I'm more likely to use that dysregulation to focus on how and why she's dysregulating me, either by being there or not being there for me, showing up in a certain way or not showing up in a way for me, giving me love or not giving me love, rather than I am focusing on what is it that I really need inside. Does that make sense to you guys? Raise your hands if you understood that, if that made sense. And I'll repeat it. Your focus becomes more on how the external world is making you feel rather than how you feel itself. That's the long and short. This is because as we go along, especially when we're born as little beings, we are born dependent. Have you ever met a baby who was born immediately and then said, I'm going to give myself love. I'm going to go get myself a job. I'm going to put a roof over my head, feed myself, protect me from like the saber-toothed tiger. Have you ever seen a baby does that? Not possible. Now, what's interesting and crazy around about the human being in itself is that we are born dependent for a longer period of time than most animals. Have you seen a bird? When a bird's born, after a few days, the mom just nudges that little bugger out the nest and he has to like fucking learn to fly. Cats, dogs, only a few weeks. Even elephants, amongst the biggest animals in the world, only a few weeks. But human beings, we have the longest dependency period until we're around 18. And it's because we have the most complex mind. It actually has nothing to do with the body. The body is long developed. In fact, by the time you hit puberty at 12, you're like, you don't technically need your parents. Because at that time, you can actually get a job. You can actually make your own family. You can continue doing those on your own. But your mind is not developed enough because your subconscious mind at that time is still developing in your teenage years when you're likely to hit puberty. So by the age of 18 is when, as we talked about before, I'm putting all the science together for you guys to realize how trauma actually exists. And that's not just some imaginary thing you're holding on to. So by the time you're actually 18, the subconscious mind closes and the forebrain, the logical mind, becomes its strongest. Now, that's why the subconscious mind, when does it exist? I mean, apart from when you're asleep now, when was it really active? When you were a kid. So it's easiest to assume that the inner child, which is basically corresponding to your subconscious mind, existed when you were a kid, because that's the time you learned the most about yourself. That's the time you were dependent on how other people would show you who you are, on how other people would act or react around you, and you didn't have enough of a logical mind to distinguish their actions from your internalization. You didn't have that capability. So their actions became your internalization. Some really blessed children, maybe, or some really strong families with like good dynamics or community support actually create the right balance of what we call communalization. That means showing the child you're part of a community or a bigger group, as well as individuation, which means showing the child that you are still your own important unit and what you say, how you feel, what you go through matters. The combination of these two things tends to produce more security in a child, is what research has shown. So it's not just, hey, I'm just loving and doting my child all the time. A healthy parent will also draw a boundary with the child, which helps them know how to individualize themselves, grow their own potential, grow their own value. But they also know when to provide love to a child. But the key thing is they have to not do it from their own wounded standpoint. That's how all of us have processed trauma, because our parents carried their own wounds. Our friends in our schools, had their own stories. That's why for them, someone will only shame, judge, criticize, or pull you down when they are afraid of what's going on in the world, when they're insecure, or when they are hurting from their own wounds, which is why research also shows that bullies suffer from high levels of insecurity, which is why they need to pull someone else down, shame someone, judge them, because they're coping with their own need to fit in, to be a leader, to be some alpha, to be the popular person, whatever else. So long and short of this is, most of what we're feeling today is actually really a projection of everything we're carrying from that period of time. Very important note, you cannot blame anybody or attach to the blame from that period. You know why? Because that's not going to solve your problem. They acted from what they knew, no matter what they did. And I know it's so heavy, it's so difficult. It's very difficult for our human mind to process this, which is why, for example, in the Gauntlet, we have 2 big weeks on resentment and shame to show you that these wounds you've carried from somebody else's actions, whether they hit you, whether they abuse you physically, emotionally, whatever, those are not your wounds to carry. So don't fucking internalize them. Those are somebody else's wounds that they vomited on you and you didn't have the ability to protect yourself from them at that time. But it's not your burden to carry. Now, coming back to reparenting. Why reparenting is the most important thing for me is, remember I said, almost everything you're feeling today is a projection of some experiences or old stories that you're carrying. So if I'm feeling lonely when someone rejects me, if I'm feeling heartbroken or sad when someone leaves me, if I'm feeling depressed when I don't have love, I want to change these things, no? So if I want to change these things, I can't just change how I'm feeling. I have to change why I'm feeling that way. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes? Because you cannot control the external factors. You can't control if a relationship with you and someone you really want works well or not. You can't control that. Maybe something happens to them. Maybe they get wounded. Maybe trauma occurs. Maybe that trauma comes up in some way, shape, or form. And so that relationship doesn't work. So you can't control that. But what you can control is how you react to it, what you get from it, or how you attach to it or move forward from it. You can't control whether something else, and your boss suddenly the fucking recession comes up. You can't control that. And so your financial situation, if it changes, it should not make you a slave. It should not make your entire existence a slave to what's occurring around you. So how do you change all of this? By changing how you react and why you're reacting to these things in the first place. So coming a step deeper, and we talked about reparenting being meeting the needs of this little child or this younger version of myself that I always had, but were never met. So this requires 2 steps. Wouldn't you agree? One is being freaking aware of what those needs are. Correct? Wouldn't you all agree? If I'm not aware, how will I know what I have to meet? And the second thing is the actual reparenting process, which is repeating of parenting, which means having a second chance at changing the story, having a second chance at parenting. It's not child living. It's reparenting, having a second chance at guiding, loving, supporting, showing up for, nurturing, meeting the needs of that little bugger who was me when I was younger, so that I can have a different influence on my life. Now, when I first started studying this, the biggest question that I had was what a load of bull, because I can't go back in the freaking past and change anything. So why the fuck am I trying to study how to change something that a little child version of me did, instead of just focusing on doing what I can for my future, right? So I started studying the neuroscience behind it. Carl Jung, I'm not sure if is anybody familiar with Carl Jung? Very famous psychologist from maybe the 40s, 50s. He was just around the time of Freud. Everybody's heard of Freud. But Carl Jung created the concept of reparenting because he discovered one very important thing: the power of the subconscious mind to change. The subconscious mind has 2 incredible powers. One, to never change, and the other, if you get it right, to change incredibly. And both these things only these two things will influence your life. Whether it doesn't change, so you repeat everything, and no matter what you try to do, you'll go back, or whether you can change what's in here, which means everything will start going in this direction. So he studied it and he recognized, and listen to this. This blew me when I studied the neuroscience behind it. Your brain, under the right conditions, if you feed it new information, I'm repeating this, under the right conditions, it will believe those conditions. So I believe that new information as if it was real. So much so that if you now, once believing those things, step into your life, you'll believe them so much that you'll only act in this direction. Have you ever had that experience where you wake up from a dream and it was so real that you were like, oh my God, like I'm either really scared because of this, or I'm really happy because of this, or I want to reach out to someone else because of this and connect with them emotionally. Have you ever had that feeling? Yes, raise your hand. That's how real it is, because when you're dreaming, your subconscious is like dancing and playing and doing everything. And like, it's actually healing your brain when you have deep sleep as well. So your subconscious is incredible. So how can you do this under control? Because you can't do this like in your sleep, you can't change how you feel. So how do you do it under control? Meditating is the most powerful way of slowing down your brain waves. But meditating has to be preempted by breath work or some way to regulate your nervous system, because your brain is the seat of your nervous system. You guys know that, right? So if you don't slow down your nervous system, your brain is going to be like, well, fuck off. I'm not going to change at all. Pardon the French and the middle fingers, but it's just basically going to say, I'm not going to do anything. So you have to slow down the brain waves to a point where the brain is like, now I'm listening. What do you have to say to me? And then when you feed it this new information, it slowly starts processing it and believing it. Are you hurting from shame, loneliness, toxic relationships? Do you want to break that pattern and create a beautiful, loving life for yourself? Well, my name is Yats, and I'm an inner work and relationship guru. And I have helped thousands of women and men from all around the world learn to become their best selves and have the lives that they truly want and desire. This channel was designed for you to be able to heal those old wounds, be able to become and elevate your best self, and to you to love your life really that you have right now. And I offer an 8-week program called the GAUNTLET, which takes you on this amazing journey of healing those wounds. And I also offer in-person live retreats all around the world where you can access that same level of healing and empowerment. I want you to do something for you today. I want you to watch some of these videos. And if these videos hit close to home, they resonate with you and they're giving you some inspiration, then I want you to subscribe and share it with somebody else who needs it. These videos aren't just for someone to consume. They're meant to inspire people to take action. And if you want to take action in your own life, jump in the comments, watch the videos, send me a DM at the Inner Yats on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next video.